Hello, and thank you for joining me for this Introduction to Boundaries video. As you know, our overall approach to treatment is a character structure-based therapy, which really means that instead of focusing only or mainly on symptoms and fruits, we're really looking at developing the internal capacities that people need in order to successfully manage the challenges of life. So if you think about it like a tree, the fruit on the tree is really those symptoms, the behaviors, the interactions with people, and what it looks like on the surface. And then below that, you've got the trunk, you've got the root system. And if you look at that from a human growth perspective, we're talking about the developmental pathway from bonding and attachment to then healthy differentiation and separation to then integration and being able to hold the good and bad in life and in others and in yourself. And then the ability to have agency, to make impact, to develop skills for adulthood. So we call those different capacities bonding, boundaries, reality, and competence. And of course, all of this needs to be developed and grown and integrated over the course of time with healthy doses of grace and truth in our interactions with other people. Research in looking at this type of approach really highlights that in comparison to things that are more of a cognitive, brief therapy approach, this type of approach based on building inner resources, the benefits are longer lasting and not just transitory. It really extend well beyond symptom remission and foster inner resources and capacities that allow richer, freer, and more fulfilling lives. One of the modalities we utilize here is based on emotional coherence theory, which also looks at identifying core emotional learning that drives problems in functioning, and then activating that core learning in a here and now experience, and then creating a mismatching or emotionally corrective experience to rewire and repattern that brain at a deep limbic system level, and then repeating that process over and over again. So you've got kind of the idea that over time we build up these patterns and habits, ways of being and relating with people, and then through activating a core learning, we're really creating like a wet cement in that wiring in the brain. And then by creating a new mismatching experience, we're repatterning and reshaping that while it's like wet cement in the brain. And then over and over again, you're basically creating that as your new pattern. So think of it as like walking a path in your yard every day, back and forth, back and forth. Pretty soon, you've created that path in your dirt that everybody can see it and it's well worn. It's kind of the same way in your brain that as you repattern and recreate these systems while it's activated in your brain and it's like wet cement, it more quickly allows you to be able to activate or to repattern and rechange and reshape and make that new pattern in your brain. So that's based on the emotional coherence theory. So looking back at then bonding, boundaries, reality, and competence, and today we're going to focus on the boundaries, but just to kind of shape and give context for where it's at along the developmental pathway, we're going to start a little bit with bonding and then move into boundaries. So as a reminder, bonding is really the ability to relate to God and others, connect to something outside of yourself. And all of life's tasks are really based on this ability, and with it, you're never left without a way to meet your needs. And then boundaries, building on that, is the ability to see yourself as separate from others and therefore own your life as your responsibility. And then we know that building on from that differentiation piece, we have reality or integration, the ability to hold on to and pursue your ideals while accepting, forgiving, and redeeming the imperfection you encounter in yourself, others, and the world around you. And then competence builds on that. And we define that as the ability to be productive in the world and to contribute meaningfully to others in a significant way. So let's start with bonding. This is the first developmental step. And when we are born into the world, we are 100% dependent upon somebody else to meet our needs and to take care of us, to really help us even just to survive at our most basic level. So during this stage, when our needs are met, when we're cared for, when we're soothed, when we're held, when we're clothed, when we're fed, when we're touched, all of those things, we internalize parents' love and connection, and we develop then inside of us the hard wiring to be able to self-soothe through those neural pathways that are developed through that soothing process. When we develop bonding healthily, we are able to form healthy dependence, because life is not about being completely independent and saying, I can do everything I need myself, I don't need anybody else. But it's also not codependence, enmeshment, where I'm completely only okay if others are okay, and I meet their needs and they meet my needs, because I wouldn't be okay if other people aren't okay. That's more enmeshment and codependency. So bonding really is this healthy place of, I recognize that I have needs and that other people around me can help to meet my needs, and that it's okay to have some level of dependence on other people in meeting my needs. So through that bonding process, we learn to see that that's an okay thing, and that other people are safe and dependable in some way. Some other people can be safe and dependable, and I can reach out and get my needs met. We also, through the healthy bonding process, learn to experience the feeling that we are connected even when we're apart. I can be in a room all by myself and yet feel like I'm not alone in the world. I'm still connected. I still have these bonds and attachments, even when I'm alone in the room. On the other hand, when we don't develop this, we have a sense, even when we're in the room with somebody, we can feel detached and alone. And again, finally, with a healthy developmental process of bonding, we develop the desire for connection. We have the sense that connection and relationship is a good thing. I want to be connected and in relationship with other people, and you kind of have this then sense of longing and desire to be in connection with others. So one of the things that's important to point out is that not everybody has a healthy developmental process. And in fact, many people on some scale or continuum have a lack of safety as it relates to the attachment process. Maybe there's a fear of closeness, a fear of intimacy. Maybe there's a sense that I don't want to need other people, or that I'm detached from myself and my own feelings and my awareness of who I am and all of those things. So it's important to be aware that that does not mean that for the rest of my life I'm stuck with this lack of attachment. And if I didn't get it in my first 3 years of life, then that sets the stage for the rest of my life to have difficulty in this area. While it can be difficult and it can create challenges to have this lack of attachment, there is a process that we call earned secure attachment, where we can continue to develop throughout our life the ability to be in safe, connected relationship with other people, and to have healthy dependency, and to be aware of our feelings and needs and reach out to other people to get them met. And so there's this process of earned secure attachment where first we learn to become aware of our feelings. We develop through education, through being in a relationship with other people. So it takes risk to start. It takes awareness to intentionally go about this process. But with help, with a therapist, with safe other people, we begin to become aware of our feelings, and then we become aware of our needs. And then we begin to ask safe people to step in and meet those needs. And then we take in what those healthy, safe people, safe, dependable others give into us, what they speak into us, how they provide for us. And then we metabolize those relational nutrients, meaning we hold on to them, we feel them, we take them in, we process those. Rather, as an example, if somebody is trying to meet my need for validation and I say, oh, yeah, you're just saying that to be nice, or you don't really understand. No, to receive and metabolize means I really intentionally take that in and hold on to it and reflect on it. And then I go back to the beginning and I'm continually engaging in this process of becoming aware of my feelings, becoming aware of my needs, asking safe people to meet those needs, and then really receiving and taking in, metabolizing those relational nutrients. So this healthy bonding process then sets the stage for that next developmental stage of boundaries. And we may call that differentiation, individuation, but it's this idea of taking this close attachment where I am safe, I'm connected, I'm in relationship with others, and now I begin to explore the world, explore who I am as an individual person apart from those connections with other people. And if we have that safety in attachment, then we actually have increased security to be able to separate and explore the world around us and venture out and take risk. So The goal in bonding then is not to create just a mini me, somebody exactly like me who will do what I want to make me happy and to just be with me forever. Obviously, right? The idea in bonding and attaching to a little one is you're creating this healthy dependency and awareness of need and connection, and then also the ability to be their own person, to be autonomous, to eventually have that separation and ability to differentiate and be who they are created to be, with all of the gifts and talents and abilities and skills and knowledge and awareness that they have and will continue to develop. So this begins typically around age 1, where up to that point, the infant is very dependent and unable to express their own individual needs, unable to really be even aware of their own self as a separate person from their caregiver. But around age 1, they start to explore who they are, and they start to explore their surroundings, and they start to be aware that they're different than mom or dad, and they have their own wants. And so you start to hear them say their new favorite word, which is no, because they don't want to do everything that mommy or daddy says to do. They want to do what they now realize they want to do. So that process of differentiation, while hard, and we call it the terrible twos for a reason, is also so important and healthy for the individual to begin to explore and learn who they are and who they're supposed to be and who they want to be and what they like and what they don't like. And we see this in God, in the Godhead, the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, where He is one, and they are unique, distinct, separate persons as well. They are God, and they are Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And in their unity and their connection, they don't lose their individual identities. They still operate with their uniqueness. Who is God, and what does He, the Father, do and represent and be and maintain? And who is Jesus, and how does He reflect and represent God and the Father? How does He partner with Holy Spirit? And what is Holy Spirit's role in our lives as unique from the Father and from the Son? So you see this all throughout Scripture as you understand the Trinity and who God is as individual persons as well. And so we're created in His image. We are also one. We are one with the Father. We are one with Jesus, and we are unique. We are ourselves. We have a role in the world as the church, as His body, as a believer. So we are connected. We are one, connected to the vine, and we are our own distinct people. You also see boundaries in the Bible as you look at Jesus in lots of different passages, retreating to be alone. And He, in that, had to go connect with His Father, which also meant separating from His followers. He had to withdraw, retreat, be alone, and yet in that being alone, He was connecting to Father. So it's important for us to be aware that in meeting other people's needs, just like Jesus, there's a place to retreat. There's a place to be alone and be away and recharge and refuel and make sure that you're hearing from God and you're being filled up. So we talked a little bit already about the developmental stages of boundaries. So we began with age 1, or what we kind of call the terrible twos, and the idea that a child is starting to learn that they can say no, that they can push back, that they can go explore, that they're different from mom and dad, and that they can be maybe safe or happy being separate from mom and dad for longer periods of time. You might see them off playing with their toys a little bit more by themselves, and even sometimes, especially when there's a real safe and secure attachment, you'll actually see the child venture out a little bit further. Maybe they're at the park and they walk away, but they look back to make sure you're still there, but then they keep taking a few steps and they're feeling that safety to go and explore while also looking back to make sure that you're still there. So all of that is developing in this very early stage of differentiation. But it doesn't end there. It's a process throughout our lives of really continuing to develop and separate and be who we are. And we really see this again in a really big way through the teenage years. It's this kind of second burst of differentiation where the teenager is really starting to explore, okay, who am I apart from my family unit that I've grown up with and I've lived with all these years. But now that I'm like in middle school, now that I'm in high school, you start to see a shift where the primary influence begins to be those outside of the home, begins to be friends, and they're valuing the relationships with their friends more, and they're valuing the input and the feedback that they get from friends and those outside the home. And while that is scary, and again, hard, just like terrible twos can be a hard differentiation process, it's also a good process in many ways for the teens to be able to explore who they are and begin to own themselves. Because again, it's not that we just want to create mini-me's where they just adopt every single thought, feeling, and belief of the parents. It is important for them to be able to explore and develop who they are. In the teenage years, they're also beginning to learn, how do I use my voice effectively? How do I assert myself? And so a lot of times we see this in the adolescent phase where they're using their voice in not so healthy or effective ways. They're screaming, they're yelling, they're crying, they're rebelling, they're doing all these things where their goal is to be able to be heard, to have a voice, to get what they want and to get their needs met. But they're doing it in a way that is rebellious or against authority versus knowing how to healthily use their authority. They also, in the teenage years, there's a big exploration of their interests and preferences. So you see a lot of this time where maybe they're getting their first job, maybe they're on their first sports team, or maybe they're on multiple sports teams. They're in clubs at school. But they're really beginning to explore, do I like this? Do I like that? Am I good at this? Am I good at that? And so there's a lot of different ways that they're beginning to express and explore these interests and preferences. But again, even though you see a huge development in this area around the terrible twos, I shouldn't keep calling it that, around age 1 and 2 and 3, and then again during the teenage years, you also see it for the rest of our lives. That we're continually, how many of us in our 20s and in college, and then again when we got married, or when we kind of moved out on our own, or in our 30s as we're like working whatever career path we're on, every stage of our lives we're beginning to redefine or more clearly define who we are and what we're good at, and using our voice and our impact in the world. So this differentiation stage, just like the ability to continue this earned secure attachment and build the capacity for attachment, goes on for the rest of our lives. So does this differentiation process. We're continually able to explore and express who we are. So without healthy boundaries, let's talk about this for a moment and begin. Sometimes it's helpful to put words to what does it look like when we lack healthy boundaries. So one way is when we are missing this piece, or when it's deficient, this boundaries or separation capacity, we lack identity and we really don't know who we are, in the sense that we lack clarity around, well, what do I stand for? What do I like? And so we might say things like, when people ask us, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Where should we eat? What should we do tonight? We say things like, I don't know, you decide. I don't really care. Anything is fine with me. I have no real preference. So again, if we find ourselves always saying things like this, where we're not having an opinion, where we're not asserting ourselves, sometimes this is an indication of a lack of awareness or differentiation. Another piece around this is that we can tend to take on other people's emotions. So without clear definition and boundaries, it's not like your emotions are yours and my emotions are mine. Instead, it's all mixed up. And if you're feeling something, then I'm feeling it too. And if I'm feeling something, I'm expecting you to hold on to it too. So we lack that emotional boundary piece. And sometimes what that sounds like can be people saying things just where their emotion is so strong. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so hurt. I'm so angry. Everybody hates me. Where it's evidence that we're really feeling. If somebody else has maybe even a minor offense against me, like they're upset with me about something, I take it on as so extreme and so hurtful because I not only feel so strongly that they hate me and that they're against me or they don't like me, but I even generalize that to other people. Everybody probably feels that way. Everybody hates me. So we tend to take on other people's emotions. Another indication of a lack of boundaries and separation is that we feel responsible for things that are not ours to own. We say things like, it's all my fault, they're all mad at me, or I can't say no, I can do it, it's fine. So we are owning things that should be the responsibility of other people. We feel like it's our job to take care of other people, to get stuff done, to do it all, and we're taking on more than our fair share. Another piece is caring too much about other people's opinions of us. We may be constantly looking for reassurance from other people. Do I look okay? What do you think? How was that? How did I come across? Are you mad at me? Are we okay? We're constantly needing to gauge and be okay with how other people feel about us versus being safe and secure with, I know who I am. I like who I am. I am defined as a person, and I don't need other people to be constantly validating that I'm okay. Another one is we say yes when we should or want to say no, and then we resent other people for it. So, if somebody says, hey, can you do this for me this weekend? Are you available to help out with that? Can you complete this task? Can you do this for me? Even though our inside is saying no, outside we find ourselves saying, oh, sure, yeah, I can do that for you. But then apart from that, we might be saying things like, I'm so overwhelmed. I have so much going on. And then we resent other people who then maybe won't reciprocate and do stuff for us. We're like, I've done so much for you. I'm always helping out. Like, I did this for you. I helped you last weekend. Why won't you help me? And we don't realize other people maybe have a stronger no muscle. They're able to say no and not feel as bad about it as we do. So we're constantly saying yes and doing everything everybody wants us to do for them. And then we get really hurt and resentful when other people aren't doing the same thing for us. Another example is the sense that other people rule our lives, are in charge of things for us. We feel like I can't do something, or we tend to blame other people because we feel like we have no power. So we say things like, it's not my fault, or they won't let me, or whatever. But it's always this kind of us and them where I lack the agency and initiative to be able to really feel like I own my life, I own my choices, I can do what I want to do, I've got power. But instead we're stuck in this place of other people holding the power. Another example is the feeling that you can't handle things yourselves and you need other people to rescue you. So again, we're reaching out for other people. Why weren't you there for me? I needed you. You let me down and you weren't there. But it's this sense of helpless dependency because, again, if we haven't developed this differentiation, then we're stuck in that dependency stage and we're needing other people to continually take care of us, just like maybe in infancy, we got everything we needed. And maybe throughout then our childhood, maybe people, for whatever reason, enabled this kind of helpless role where they took care of me and did things for me, and I didn't really get to step out and be autonomous and do things on my own, and I'm just stuck there. I expect that the world is going to treat me that way, that other people will continue to meet my needs in that same way and to take care of me. Another aspect of lacking healthy boundaries and separation is the idea that you can't stand to be alone and you just feel empty. That when we lack separation, we feel like if I'm alone in the room, I'm alone in the world. That we don't carry along with us the sense of attachment because we lack definition of self. And so in order to feel connected, I have to be literally with you. So we always feel lonely even when we're with people. And we see this a lot of times exhibited in people numbing themselves because I don't want to feel alone. It's the most desperate feeling in the world to be alone. So we begin to just numb out that feeling with maybe things like alcohol, self-harm, or other things that just take away that feeling of loneliness. And then the last one is lacking agency and initiative. So it's the idea that being kind of living your life with lethargy, no energy, not a self-starter, self-manager, need people to tell me what to do. I lack creativity and problem solving. Just this sense of things need to come from outside of me, not from inside of me. So those are evidences, and maybe you hear yourself or those you know and are close to reflected in some of those, and that's okay. Take heart. We all, as we went through that list, had some of them come up and like, oh, I'm a little bit too much like that. Like, I don't like that part of me, or that's uncomfortable, and that's okay. Like, there are areas where we all can grow, and also we maybe want to point fingers and say, oh yeah, that's her, that's him, and it is helpful to be aware of that, and helpful to be aware of our role in that. That maybe I'm enabling other people's helplessness. Maybe I'm enabling their lack of definition and their lack of no muscle, their lack of identity, because I'm asserting my strong will and opinion and identity on them. So it is helpful to be aware of where we're at and where other people are at. So what's the cost of not having healthy boundaries in our lives and setting boundaries? Well, there's lots of costs. When we aren't differentiated and aren't able to say no or use our voice or assert who we are, step in and set boundaries, there's a huge cost on our time. We're saying yes to everything. On our energy, we're feeling depleted. On our money, because we're overspending. On our emotional well-being, because we're taking on everybody else's emotions and owning it as if it's ours. On our safety, because we're not creating healthy space and boundaries from other people that may take advantage of us, that aren't safe people. On our physical health, because we're overextending ourselves. And again, we talked about the bitterness or resentment that we can take on when we're expecting people to step in ways that they're not stepping in and helping out. So that can create a wedge and just an ongoing resentment and bitterness that even then affects our health as well. And then finally, lack of identity and ownership. We can create this sense of just lack of purpose. There's a cost to my sense of self, my inner feeling of confidence and identity and ownership over my life. So think about boundaries as the fence around your personal property. And you get to determine, because there's a gate around your personal property, you can determine what goes in and what goes out. And with that, then, boundaries create safety. And then further, what's really important to know is boundaries enhance relationship, even when we're saying no. Think about it this way. If you really trust that the people around you can say no to you, doesn't it somewhat increase the safety with which you approach them? Because you know you can reach out to them and say, hey, John, can you help me this weekend? Can I borrow this from you? Can we do that? Would you be able to help? And you know that you have the safety in your relationship where you can say no to each other. When you have that level of boundaries in your relationship where you're not over-owning, you're not taking on other people's emotions, then there is safety. You can go to each other with what you need and what you're feeling, and you know that they're able to be there for you. They're able to tell you when they're not. They're able to say no to you. So it really does. Boundaries, even though sometimes it feels like a word that is meant to keep people away and at a distance, and we think, I used to feel like boundaries meant that I wasn't approachable or that I wasn't going to assist people or help people or lay down my life for people or that type of thing where I wasn't able to be compassionate. But the reality is boundaries can enhance and should enhance relationship. So what's scary about the word no? Think about that in your life as people, maybe when we don't say no enough, when we don't set boundaries like we should. Why don't we? What is scary about saying no? Maybe just reflect on that for a second, because there's lots of times when most of us, and that's why the book Boundaries has been a bestseller since like the 1980s, because the tagline is how to say yes and when to say no, I think it is. But we all need that help in being able, maybe it's when to say yes and how to say no, I forget, but we all need that help in knowing that it's okay and we need to say no sometimes, and that actually enhances the yeses that we're able to give to people. So, but sometimes we fear setting boundaries or saying no because, one, we're afraid that we'll lose the relationship. If I say no to them, then maybe they'll pull away, and then I'll be alone. If I start saying no to everybody, then they won't like me anymore. They won't want to be my friend or be connected with me or come to me anymore. Secondly, we might fear retaliation. That if I say no to them, and this is sometimes more what we see with parents and teens, right? Is that if I say no, I don't want to deal with the retaliation. I can't handle their anger toward me. Maybe it's I'm not strong enough to face them. Maybe that's with like a boss or a coworker. If I say no, then I'm going to deal with the fallout from that, and I don't want to deal with that kind of retaliation. Maybe there's guilt. Maybe that in setting boundaries, there's a sense of I don't want to hurt anybody, and I should do this, and maybe people can't handle my no, and I'm being too much for people by setting this boundary, so I feel guilty, and I just give in and go ahead and say yes. Or maybe there's a fear that they can't handle it, and again, we see this a lot with teens, with parents to teens, that we really have seen a fragilizing in the sense that we've gotten to this point because when I've said no, they've self-harmed, or they've threatened to self-harm, or they've threatened to kill themselves. And so then I have learned to just not say no, to not enforce those hard boundaries because I'm afraid they'll break. I'm afraid that that bad thing will happen. I'm afraid that it will be too much for them. And so this process is about getting everybody stronger to the point where we change that dynamic and help parents to realize that their child's no longer fragile, but also help to get the child to where they're not going to those old patterns of self-harming, threatening to self-harm, threatening to kill themselves, so that there is less fragility. Because the reality is, okay, if we are that fragile, then we're going to go to the inpatient. We're going to go back to that place of making sure that they're safe. But otherwise, if we've built up this resilience and we're at a better place, then let's start enforcing those boundaries again and know that they're no longer fragile, and let's not treat them as they're fragile. So, but that's where this fear comes in, that we're afraid that it'll be too much for them. So let's look at that, because sometimes there is fragility that we were just talking about, and sometimes there's just reactivity. That a lot of times the response to our boundaries is a reactive reaction. They'll respond with strong emotion because they don't like your boundaries, not because they're fragile. And the other important piece to remember about that is there is a difference between hurt and harm. It will hurt people when you say no or when you set a limit. It can hurt people. Doesn't always. But if people are like, they're counting on you, they really want you to do this for them, or they really want this particular answer, and you say no or you set a limit, that will maybe hurt their feelings or hurt their desires, or in some way make them feel bad or not taken care of or something. But that doesn't mean that they're harmed. In fact, I love Proverbs 27:6. It says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. Meaning that a friend, a loved one, somebody that cares about us, is willing to give tough feedback, to say no, to set a tough boundary, because it's good for them, it's good for you, it's good for the relationship or whatever, and know that it's not causing ultimate harm. And even though it might hurt or sting, it's for good. It's for the good of you or them, and that they'll be okay. And then finally, think about, how do you handle others' no to you when you're looking at setting a boundary with others and you're dealing with all of those fears, fear of retaliation, fear of them not being able to handle it, or your own guilt or whatever. And so we end up saying yes. Think about how you handle when other people say no to you. What do you do? Chances are you adapt to it. Chances are you find other solutions. You find other ways to get your needs met, to work around. Maybe you end up working a little bit harder and get it done yourself, or you call another friend, or you reach out, or you problem solve in another creative way. And probably, ultimately, it somewhat builds a new capacity for you. It makes you stronger, or you adapt a new way to get your needs met. And so ultimately, it's okay. It helps you grow. And know that other people can do that too. That when you say no to them, they can also adapt, and they can become stronger, and they can demonstrate resilience. I'm going to put a link in the video down below where you can click on a video, and really it's just an audio clip of Brene Brown talking about setting and maintaining boundaries from The Gifts of Imperfect Parenting. And it's just like a 5-minute clip that just talks about what it's like to be raised in a home with strong boundaries and then without strong boundaries. And so I want you to listen to that and reflect on it. You can even pause the video now, listen to it, and come back. But I'll highlight for you a couple of the main takeaways. One of the things that she says in this video is it's a child's job to push boundaries, meaning it's what they do. Like, it's part of their exploration process, part of their growth. We've all done it. We all, in this process of maturation and growth, see how far we can go and what we're capable of and what we can do and what we can't do. So it is in some ways their job developmentally to push boundaries, and it's our job as parents to hold boundaries, to be that place that they push up against and to let them know where that line is. And that's that delicate dance sometimes of knowing how to not be too rigid as a parent, allow flexibility, allow even some yourself to be impacted and to change, but also not to be too flexible that there's not that safety for them to push up against. Again, she goes into that in the video or the audio clip. And then finally, that children learn to hold boundaries based on their experience of their parents' boundary setting behaviors. And so knowing that we are modeling for our kids, not only in what we say to them, but how they see us living this out. If we're constantly overworking and we're a workaholic and we can't say no on the job, then even though we're telling our kids to say no to negative peer pressure, we're showing them that we can't say no to a major influence in our lives. Or maybe it's even the church, that like if we're constantly the family that is going out and doing everything, then maybe it's time for us to say, no, we can't do that this weekend or this Wednesday evening. We need to do something as a family. And guess what? Some other families are going to have to step up, and that'll be good for them too. But instead, if we're constantly saying, we just have to say yes, we can't say no to whenever the church needs us to do something. And we all know that happens all the time. The church is always needing volunteers and servers and people to do this. And that's important. It's important to be part of the body and to help out. But it is also important to model that Jesus took time to retreat and got away from the crowds. And we can do that too as a family and say, listen, it's time for the Smith or the Brown family to step up and do something. We need this weekend as a family to not do something. And your children will learn from you your ability to say no and to hold boundaries. So finally, the boundaries definition, the ability to see yourself as separate from others, to really experience and know who you are as an individual apart from other people, and therefore then to be able to own your life as your responsibility and have that initiative. And then the statement that we put to that is, I can be in relationship with others without losing my individuality. I'm unique with my own set of likes and dislikes. I have the power to set my own limits and respect the limits of others. I'll also put some other suggested resources in the link, or links to some other suggested resources in the comment section or the video below. But I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to any questions or comments that you have. Thank you.